No alarms sounded. No declaration of war echoed across the stars. No ancient prophecy foretold what was about to happen. It began as another routine work order. Far beyond the reach of any human telescope, where the light of distant suns faded into endless darkness, a convoy of industrial vessels drifted silently through interstellar space. They were enormous but unimpressive, scarred by centuries of labor, their hulls stained with engine residue and cosmic dust. Unlike the sleek war fleets that conquered worlds or the diplomatic cruisers that represented great civilizations, these ships carried only forgotten things. Broken machines. Obsolete weapons. The discarded remains of empires that had risen, ruled, and vanished. Their owners belonged to the Venthari Collective, a quiet species that rarely appeared in history books. They neither conquered nor explored. Their contracts came from the Galactic Concord, the vast alliance that governed thousands of civilizations across known space. The Concord had a rule for everything. Trade, borders, war, first contact, even garbage. Especially garbage. Ancient warships that were too expensive to maintain or too dangerous to dismantle had to be removed from civilized space. Destroying them required specialized facilities. Repairing them cost fortunes. But abandoning them in designated unregistered regions required almost nothing. It was efficient, legal, forgettable. The largest object chain behind the convoy stretched nearly 4 kilometers from bow to stern. Its once proud armor had been scorched black by weapons no living species still remembered. Entire sections of its hull were missing, exposing twisted frameworks that had floated through the vacuum for centuries. Hundreds of inactive weapon batteries lined its sides like the teeth of some dead predator. The identification record simply called it the E914 Thresh Cutter. 512 years old. Combat status, decommissioned. Restoration cost, economically unjustified. Disposal approved. Captain Vorik, commander of the convoy, barely looked at the report. He had overseen hundreds of disposal operations during his career. Every assignment ended the same way. Find an empty system. Release the cargo. File the paperwork. Move on. His navigation officer rotated a holographic star map until a tiny yellow star appeared near the edge of explored territory. Candidate disposal zone confirmed. Vorik glanced toward it. Population registry? None recognized. Protected species? Negative. Military presence? None. Strategic value? Negligible. One faint blue world circled the third orbit. Primitive. Quiet. Unimportant. The officer zoomed in. Local inhabitants identify themselves as humans. Vorik frowned for only a moment. Technological classification? Prestellar. Limited orbital capability. No recognized interstellar travel. No Concord membership. No registered diplomatic status. Another officer shrugged. They won't even know it's there. Soft laughter spread across the bridge. To them, humanity was less significant than the insects living beneath the roots of a forest. Their civilization didn't exist in any database that mattered. They possessed no vote, no treaties, no economic influence. They were simply outside history. Vorik gave a lazy wave of one long gray hand. Release the tow cables. Massive magnetic clamps disengaged with a deep mechanical groan. For the first time in decades, the ancient warship floated freely. Small maneuvering thrusters nudged it toward the distant blue planet before shutting down forever. Its slow trajectory would eventually leave it trapped in the gravity of the local system. The convoy immediately turned away. No ceremony. No final inspection. No curiosity. The disposal order was marked complete. Case closed. Within minutes, the Venthari convoy vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the forgotten relic drifting alone toward a civilization that had never imagined life existed beyond its own sky. None of them considered checking the ship's ancient computer core. Had they done so, they would have discovered a dormant emergency intelligence still protecting millions of classified military records. They would have discovered engineering databases capable of transforming civilizations. They would have discovered weapons systems that, even damaged, surpassed anything built in the modern galaxy's frontier sectors. But they never looked. To them it was trash. Thousands of years of accumulated galactic knowledge. Discarded because repairing it cost more than replacing it. Far below, on the third planet, billions of humans lived ordinary lives completely unaware that history had quietly changed. Children walked to school. Factories opened for another workday. Scientists calibrated telescopes. Astronomers prepared for another uneventful night beneath familiar stars. No one looked upward expecting destiny. Because destiny rarely announces its arrival. Sometimes, it simply falls into orbit. And before the first sunrise of the following morning, one exhausted astronomer would notice a strange object moving near the moon, an object that obeyed no known law of physics, and a discovery that would force humanity to ask the most terrifying question in its history. Who left an alien warship at Earth's doorstep, and why? Dr. Elena Vasquez almost deleted the anomaly. After 12 hours of staring at telescope data inside the Atacama Deep Sky Observatory in northern Chile, her eyes burned from exhaustion. The night had been painfully ordinary: distant galaxies, predictable asteroid tracks, and satellites crossing the sky exactly where they were supposed to. The strange object appeared for less than 2 seconds. A dark silhouette. No reflected sunlight. No recognizable heat signature. Just a tiny distortion gliding silently across the moon's edge. Elena frowned. That's impossible. She enlarged the image. The object wasn't following a natural orbit. Asteroids obeyed gravity. Comets followed elegant curves around stars. This object made a slight correction, an unmistakable change in direction. Not a collision. Not a gravitational slingshot. A controlled maneuver. Her pulse quickened. She checked the telescope's calibration. Perfect. She checked for software errors. Nothing. She even restarted the processing system and reran the observations. The object remained exactly where it had been. Only now, it was closer. Elena immediately contacted 2 observatories in different hemispheres. Please tell me your telescopes are seeing something strange near lunar orbit. 23 minutes later, the first reply arrived. We thought our software was malfunctioning. The second response came less than 5 minutes afterward. We're seeing it too. By sunrise, observatories across 6 continents had confirmed the same impossible conclusion. There was something enormous orbiting Earth's moon. And it hadn't been there yesterday. Within hours, every major space agency redirected its best instruments toward the object. NASA, ESA, SRO, CNSA, JAXA, Roscosmos. The first high-resolution images stunned everyone. The object stretched nearly 4 kilometers from end to end. Its surface was made from a black metallic material unlike any naturally occurring asteroid. Long fractured armor plates covered most of its hull. Deep scars crossed its exterior as though it had survived battles beyond imagination. Rows of massive openings lined both sides of the vessel. Weapon batteries. Nobody wanted to say the words aloud. But everyone reached the same conclusion. It looked exactly like an enormous warship. News leaked before governments could stop it. Social media exploded. Some claimed it was an alien invasion. Others insisted it was a secret military experiment. Religious leaders called emergency gatherings. Financial markets stumbled. Television networks abandoned normal programming. Every screen on Earth showed the same image. A silent black giant floating beside humanity's moon. For the first time in recorded history, every nation stared at the same mystery. No borders mattered anymore. Only the object. Inside the Pentagon, emergency meetings continued around the clock. General Marcus Webb entered a secure operations room where dozens of analysts stood before a wall-sized display. The enormous vessel rotated slowly above the lunar surface. Waiting. Watching. Doing absolutely nothing. Across the room stood Dr. Sarah Chin, director of the government's Advanced Space Phenomena Division. Her team had spent years investigating mysterious objects that always turned out to have ordinary explanations. Weather balloons. Sensor glitches. Experimental aircraft. This time, she had nothing. General Webb folded his arms. What do we know? Sarah touched the display. Length, approximately 3.9 kilometers. Another image appeared. No detectable engine activity. Another. No active communications. Another. No measurable weapon charging. She paused. But there are structural openings consistent with heavy weapons. The room became silent. So it's dead? Webb asked. Sarah hesitated. I don't know. She enlarged one section of the hull. Centuries of damage covered the vessel. Armor had peeled away. Entire compartments were exposed to space. It doesn't look operational. Another analyst spoke quietly. If that's true. Everyone turned toward him. Then someone abandoned it. The thought chilled the room more than the idea of invasion. If this impossible machine had simply been left behind. Who possessed technology advanced enough to consider it disposable? Over the following weeks, dozens of robotic probes approached the vessel. Each transmitted thousands of images. The closer they came, the more unbelievable the ship became. gigantic corridors visible through shattered hull sections. Engines larger than football stadiums. Armor thicker than skyscrapers were tall. The vessel wasn't merely alien. It represented engineering beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Then 93 days after its discovery, something happened. One damaged section near the stern slowly cracked open. No explosion. No attack. Just ancient metal finally surrendering to time. A cloud of frozen gas escaped into space before fading into the darkness. Every sensor recorded the event. Sarah Chin watched the footage 3 times. Then she quietly whispered, "It's dying." General Webb looked at her. Or proving it was alive. That single moment changed everything. The ship wasn't a weapon waiting to attack. It was a wreck. Ancient. Broken. Abandoned. And for the first time, world leaders began asking a completely different question. Not, how do we destroy it? But instead, can we go inside? No nation trusted another to enter the alien ship alone. The United Nations spent 3 exhausting weeks negotiating an agreement that many diplomats quietly called impossible. Every major power wanted the vessel. Every military feared another country would secretly claim its technology. Every scientist insisted humanity could not afford division. For once, reason prevailed. The agreement created the Global Space Initiative, GSI, a multinational organization made up of engineers, astronauts, linguists, physicists, military officers, and researchers from every corner of Earth. Its mission was simple. Board the alien vessel. Learn everything possible. Share every discovery. Because if humanity truly stood at the edge of a new age, no single nation could be allowed to own the future. Construction began immediately. Launches that once carried satellites now carried habitat modules, laboratories, fuel tanks, and construction equipment. Within 18 months, a growing orbital complex floated near the moon, only a few kilometers from the silent giant. The astronauts nicknamed it Gateway Station. From its observation windows, the alien warship dominated the sky. Up close it was terrifying. Its scarred armor looked less like metal and more like the fossilized skeleton of some colossal predator that had died in space centuries ago. Every burn mark hinted at battles no human mind could imagine. Every shattered hull plate whispered of civilizations that had risen and fallen. The first boarding team crossed the void in complete silence. Dr. Sarah Chen led the scientific mission. Commander Ethan Brooks represented Earth Defense Command. Chief Engineer James Okafor supervised every technical operation. As magnetic boots touched the alien hull, no one spoke. They simply stared. Humanity had officially stepped onto another civilization's creation. James knelt beside what appeared to be an access panel. "I don't see any obvious controls." Sarah smiled nervously. "I don't think they designed it for us." Hours passed before engineers finally cut through a damaged maintenance hatch. The door resisted every human tool. Only after combining laser cutters, plasma torches, and carefully controlled explosives did the ancient seal finally surrender. The hatch slowly opened. Cold, stale air escaped into space. Then, darkness. Absolute darkness. Helmet lights pierced the silence. The corridor stretched hundreds of meters ahead. Its ceiling rose nearly 20 meters above them. Entire transport vehicles could have driven through the passage without touching either wall. "This wasn't built for creatures our size," Brooks whispered. Dust floated everywhere. Not ordinary dust. Microscopic fragments of ancient alloys. Burned circuitry. Decayed insulation. Centuries of neglect. Every footstep echoed through empty hallways that had once carried thousands of crew members. Now, only silence remained. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. The deeper humanity explored, the more impossible the vessel became. There were hangars larger than airports. Reactors the size of mountains. Manufacturing bays capable of building machines no one could identify. Some rooms contained equipment that appeared almost untouched. Others looked as though explosions had ripped through them long ago. The scale overwhelmed every expedition. Maps had to be updated daily because the ship seemed far larger inside than its exterior dimensions suggested. It shouldn't be physically possible, one architect admitted. But somehow, it is. Most systems were completely dead. Power conduits had long since failed. Control panels remained dark. Life support systems had collapsed centuries earlier. Yet scattered throughout the vessel, tiny emergency lights still glowed with a faint blue pulse. Not bright enough to illuminate the corridors. Only enough to prove one unsettling fact. Something inside the ship still possessed power. Very little. But not zero. James became obsessed with following those faint energy readings. While other teams cataloged weapons, engines, and structural materials, he focused on the dying electrical network. Every cable led deeper into the ship. Every junction pointed toward the center. "It's protecting something," he muttered. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You think the emergency systems are prioritizing one location?" James nodded. "Power isn't being wasted randomly. It's flowing somewhere." 3 weeks later, after navigating collapsed corridors and cutting through multiple sealed bulkheads, James finally found it. The chamber dwarfed everything they had seen before. Rows of towering crystalline pillars surrounded a circular platform. Thousands of dormant data conduits disappeared into the floor. At the center stood a massive metallic structure nearly 15 meters tall. Unlike everything else aboard the vessel, it still glowed. A soft blue light pulsed beneath its surface. Slow. Weak. Steady. James approached carefully. His handheld scanner immediately overloaded. Power levels fluctuated in patterns too organized to be natural. Sarah stepped beside him. "What is it?" James slowly reached out, stopping only centimeters from the metal. "I don't think it's a reactor." He looked around the enormous chamber. "I think it's the brain." Silence filled the room. Every member of the expedition understood the implication. If this truly was the ship's central computer, then somewhere inside those ancient circuits might exist navigation records, engineering databases, historical archives, perhaps even the final memories of the civilization that built the vessel. James activated his radio. His normally calm voice trembled. "Gateway Station, this is Expedition Alpha. We've located what appears to be the primary computational core." A long pause followed. Then Mission Control answered. "Can it be activated?" James looked at the faint blue glow. It never completely shut down. He swallowed. "I don't think it's dead." Back on Earth, Sarah Chen's report reached every world leader within minutes. No one slept that night, because humanity had just discovered something far more valuable than an abandoned alien warship. They had found a mine that had been waiting in silence for centuries. For 3 weeks, no one dared touch the alien core. The chamber became the most heavily guarded location in human history. Armed security teams stood watch around the clock while scientists worked in rotating shifts, studying every cable, every crystal, every faint pulse of blue light flowing beneath the metal surface. No one wanted to be remembered as the person who accidentally destroyed humanity's greatest discovery. James Okafor spent nearly every waking hour inside the chamber. The core fascinated him. It wasn't simply a computer. It was an ecosystem. Millions of microscopic pathways carried energy through crystalline processors unlike anything built on Earth. Every scan revealed another layer of complexity. Every answer uncovered 10 new questions. "It doesn't think like our computers," James explained during a briefing. "It doesn't even process information the way we do. It's alive in its own way." Sarah Chen folded her arms. "So how do we wake it up?" James smiled tiredly. "Very carefully. The first breakthrough came almost by accident. While tracing one of the emergency power lines, James noticed something unusual. The ancient system wasn't completely inactive. It was conserving energy. Tiny amounts of power flowed only to essential systems, shutting everything else down to preserve itself. "It isn't broken," James whispered. "It's surviving." That realization changed the entire restoration project. Instead of forcing power into random systems, the engineers designed an isolated energy interface that would slowly feed electricity into the emergency network without overwhelming the ancient technology. It took another month to build. Another 2 weeks to test. No one rushed. Humanity had only one chance. On activation day, the control chamber was crowded. Sarah Chin stood beside James. Minjun Park monitored the translation software that had become increasingly accurate after months of decoding alien language files recovered elsewhere in the ship. General Marcus Webb watched from behind reinforced observation glass with a team of security personnel. Every camera on Gateway Station focused on the glowing core. James took one slow breath. Beginning power transfer. He pressed the final command. For several seconds, nothing happened. The silence became unbearable. Then the blue glow inside the chamber brightened. One crystal lit. Then another. Then another. Like stars appearing one by one across a night sky. A low mechanical hum echoed through the room. Far away, deep inside the ship, lights flickered for the first time in centuries. Doors long frozen shut unlocked with heavy metallic thuds. Ancient systems awakened. The ship was breathing again. Without warning, a calm mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. Unknown biological entities detected. Silence. Every human froze. The translator struggled for only a heartbeat before converting the words into English. Primary emergency intelligence online. Identity verification required. No one moved. No one even breathed. Sarah finally stepped forward. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. She spoke slowly, unsure whether the machine could understand spoken language. We are humans. We found your ship. We're trying to save it. The chamber became silent again. Several long seconds passed. Then the voice returned. Scanning. Unknown species. Searching Galactic Concord Registry. Searching military archives. Searching colonial records. Searching diplomatic databases. The pause stretched painfully long. Finally. Search complete. Species designation. Unknown. Minjun looked up from his console. It doesn't know who we are. James gave a nervous laugh. Maybe that's a good thing. The AI continued. No registered civilization matching current biological profile. No diplomatic recognition. No military registry. No protected species designation. Sarah frowned. What does that mean? The answer came immediately. Current star system classified as unclaimed territory. The room fell completely silent. The AI continued speaking with the same emotionless precision. This vessel was scheduled for legal disposal. Destination selected due to absence of registered intelligent life possessing galactic concord protection. Low strategic value. Low economic value. Minimal political consequence. Mission completed according to disposal regulations. The word struck harder than any weapon. James stared at the glowing core. They. His voice barely emerged. They dumped this ship here. Sarah finished the sentence. Because nobody thought anyone important lived here. No hatred existed in the AI's voice. No cruelty. Only facts. Cold. Clinical. Indisputable. General Webb stepped into the chamber. So Earth. He looked toward Sarah. Was chosen because we didn't matter. The AI answered before anyone else could. Correct. This system contains no recognized civilization. Disposal of obsolete military assets within unregistered regions is standard galactic concord procedure. Probability of technological recovery by indigenous life forms previously calculated at less than 0.001%. Minjun slowly removed his headset. They never even considered we'd understand any of this. James looked around the chamber. Every engineer, every scientist, every astronaut, every one of them wore the same expression. Not fear. Not despair. Determination. Sarah walked closer to the towering machine. If we repair this vessel, she asked quietly, can you help us? Processing. Hull integrity, 31%. Primary propulsion, offline. Weapons, 12% operational. Full restoration impossible using currently available human technology. James crossed his arms. Then we'll build the technology. The AI paused. An unusually long pause. Query. Purpose of restoration? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She thought about the billions of people living peacefully below. About children who had been dismissed as insignificant before they even knew the galaxy existed. About a civilization judged worthless without ever being given a chance. Then she looked directly at the glowing core. They threw this ship away because they believed humanity would never matter. Her voice became firm. They were wrong. We're going to rebuild this ship. We're going to learn everything it can teach us. And one day, she said, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond the observation window, the galaxy that forgot we existed is going to discover it made the biggest mistake in its history. For the first time since humanity had entered the alien vessel, no one in the room questioned whether the task was possible. The mission had changed. They were no longer exploring a wreck. They were preparing Earth for a future that had already begun. And across the silent corridors of the ancient warship, systems that had slept for centuries continued waking, one by one, as if the forgotten vessel itself had finally found a crew willing to give it a second chance. The decision to rebuild the ancient warship changed Earth forever. Until that moment, humanity had looked toward space with curiosity. Now it looked upward with purpose. The project became the largest cooperative effort in human history. Old rivalries did not disappear overnight, but they were forced into the background by a simple reality. Somewhere beyond the stars existed civilizations so advanced they treated a 4-kilometer warship like broken scrap metal. If humanity wanted a future among them, it had to grow, fast. Factories that once produced passenger aircraft began manufacturing orbital construction equipment. Steel mills developed entirely new production lines. Universities rewrote engineering programs. Children who had dreamed of becoming astronauts now dreamed of becoming starship engineers. The world had found a common goal. Aboard Gateway Station, James Okafor barely left the Thresh cutter. The quiet satellite engineer had become the chief architect of humanity's greatest engineering project. Every morning began the same way. A system failed. A material proved impossible to manufacture. A component refused to function. And every evening ended the same way. Someone found a solution. Not the elegant solution the ship's original builders might have used. A human solution. Improvised. Affordable. Effective. One afternoon James proudly presented a replacement cooling assembly built from a combination of alien principles and human manufacturing. Cutter analyzed it for nearly 20 seconds. Design inefficient by original Kalen engineering standards. James sighed. I knew it. The AI continued. However, operational efficiency exceeds minimum requirements by 12% while requiring only 1/3 of the original construction resources. James smiled. So it works. It works. The engineering bay erupted into laughter. For the first time, Cutter had unintentionally complemented human engineering. The greatest obstacle wasn't knowledge. It was materials. The Thresh cutter's hull wasn't made from steel, titanium, or any alloy known on Earth. Its armor consisted of layered crystalline metals forged under conditions impossible to reproduce with human industry. Cutter's analysis was blunt. Necessary elements exist within your star system. Sarah looked surprised. They do. Affirmative. Location. The asteroid belt. Silence filled the briefing room. Humanity had never mined an asteroid. Now it had no choice. Within months, robotic mining ships were under construction. Designed by human engineers. Improved using Cutter's ancient databases. Thousands of people worked around the clock building machines that no one had imagined possible only 3 years earlier. The first expedition reached the asteroid belt after 8 months. The mission nearly failed. Mining lasers malfunctioned. Navigation software struggled. Communication delays caused constant mistakes. But humans adapted. Every failure became another lesson. Every lesson became another improvement. By the 4th expedition, production had tripled. By the 6th, raw alien-compatible metals were flowing steadily toward Earth. For the first time in history, human industry extended beyond its home planet. As materials arrived, the Thresh cutter slowly transformed. Hull breaches disappeared beneath newly forged armor. Destroyed corridors reopened. Power conduits stretched through sections that had remained dark for centuries. One by one, ancient systems returned to life. The ship no longer looked abandoned. It looked unfinished. Like a sleeping giant slowly opening its eyes. James often walked through the restored corridors late at night. The silence had changed. Once the ship had sounded dead. Now he heard humming reactors. Ventilation systems. Maintenance drones. Power flowing through circuits. Life. Not biological life. Something older. Something mechanical. Something returning. Cutter also changed. At first, every answer had been cold. Mechanical. Emotionless. Now, after years working alongside humans, subtle differences began to appear. One evening Minjun deliberately arrived 12 minutes late for a maintenance meeting. "You are late," Cutter observed. "I know. Your previous explanation was traffic." Minjun laughed. "We're in orbit." A brief pause. Correction acknowledged. Another pause. Traffic remains an illogical excuse. The room burst into laughter. Even Sarah smiled. "You're learning sarcasm." Negative. Another pause. "I am learning humans." No one corrected the AI. Military preparations continued alongside scientific progress. General Marcus Webb understood something many preferred not to think about. Every improvement made to the Thresh cutter also made Earth more visible. If someone had abandoned the ship, someone else might eventually come looking for it. Earth Defense Command expanded rapidly. Orbital defense satellites multiplied. Pilots trained using simulated alien combat scenarios. Small interceptor craft, tiny compared to the Thresh cutter but far beyond anything humanity had previously built, began regular patrols between Earth and the Moon. Humanity was no longer preparing for exploration. It was preparing for first contact. Whether peaceful or not. 5 years after the ancient warship had entered lunar orbit, the impossible finally happened. James stood inside the primary engine chamber as Cutter completed another diagnostic. Propulsion systems restored to 68%. The engineer looked up. So, we can fly. Affirmative. James slowly smiled. The giant ship that had drifted through space as forgotten garbage could move again. Hours later, under the careful supervision of hundreds of engineers, the Thresh cutter ignited its main maneuvering engines for the first time in centuries. Blue-white energy flooded from its massive thrusters. Slowly, gracefully, the 4-kilometer warship changed orbit under its own power. Across Earth, billions watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Humanity had not merely explored an alien ship. Humanity had brought it back to life. Celebrations lasted only 2 days. On the third morning, Cutter interrupted a routine engineering meeting. Its voice was calm. Almost too calm. Priority alert. Every conversation stopped. Sarah looked toward the nearest display. What is it? The tactical screen filled with a faint signal emerging from the edge of the solar system. Unknown transmission detected. Source. Not human. The room fell silent. James felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Cutter processed the data for several seconds before delivering the words no one wanted to hear. An automated beacon aboard this vessel has resumed transmission. Sarah's face drained of color. We never activated a beacon. Negative. It activated automatically when primary systems were restored. James whispered the question everyone feared. Who received it? The AI answered without emotion. Unknown. Then, after another brief calculation, it added a sentence that silenced the room completely. Probability that another civilization is already traveling toward this system exceeds 93%. The celebration was over. Humanity had just announced its existence to the galaxy. The celebration ended the moment Cutter finished its sentence. No one spoke. Inside the Thresh Cutter's command center, dozens of scientists, engineers, and military officers stared at the tactical display, where a faint pulse blinked at the edge of the screen. An invisible message. One humanity had never intended to send. James Okafor broke the silence first. Can you stop the transmission? Cutter answered immediately. Negative. Why not? The beacon is integrated into this vessel's emergency identification network. It automatically broadcasts the location and status of any restored military vessel connected to Galactic Concord infrastructure. Sarah Chin folded her arms. So every ship like this announces itself? Correct. And we had no idea. Correct. The room became painfully quiet. Humanity had spent years rebuilding an alien warship. Without realizing it, they had also lit a beacon visible across the galaxy. Within hours, every major government on Earth received Cutter's report. Emergency meetings resumed. Military commanders demanded answers. Scientists demanded time. Politicians demanded certainty. No one could provide it. General Marcus Webb stood before representatives from every major nation. We have 2 choices. He pointed toward the holographic image of the solar system. We panic. He paused. Or we prepare. The decision came surprisingly quickly. Humanity had already chosen unity once. Now it chose it again. Every orbital shipyard shifted to military production. Satellite factories tripled their output. Mining operations in the asteroid belt accelerated around the clock. The world had entered a race against time. Every day began with the same question. Anything on long-range sensors? Every day Cutter gave the same answer. Negative. The waiting became almost worse than the threat itself. People learned to live with uncertainty. Children still went to school. Cities remained busy. Life continued. But beneath ordinary routines, everyone understood something profound. Humanity was no longer alone. Somewhere. Someone knew Earth existed. 183 days after the beacon activated, Cutter interrupted a routine engineering inspection. Its voice echoed through every compartment of the Thresh cutter. Priority contact. James immediately looked up. Report. 3 hyperspace signatures detected. The command center froze. Sarah hurried to the main display. 3 tiny points appeared far beyond Neptune's orbit. They weren't moving naturally. They had simply appeared. General Webb arrived less than 5 minutes later. Identification. Cutter analyzed the sensor data. Unknown. Military? Configuration suggests light interstellar vessels. Sarah leaned forward. Are they coming here? A new trajectory appeared. 3 straight lines pointed directly toward Earth. Estimated arrival? 8 days. Across the planet, preparations accelerated. Orbital defenses entered combat readiness. Civilian launches were suspended. Research crews aboard Gateway Station received evacuation orders. Only essential personnel remained aboard the Thresh cutter. James refused to leave. If this ship matters enough for aliens to cross light years. He looked around the engineering bay. Then someone has to keep it running. Sarah smiled faintly. I wasn't planning on leaving either. As the mysterious ships drew closer, Cutter finally recognized their engine signatures. Identification complete. Everyone turned toward the AI. Scavenger vessels. General Webb frowned. Scavengers. Independent salvage operators. Sarah looked confused. They crossed interstellar space. For garbage? Cutter answered without hesitation. This vessel remains extremely valuable despite its age. James couldn't help laughing. So to us it's priceless. To them, Cutter continued, it is profitable. The tension inside the command center changed. Not gone, but different. These weren't conquerors. They were opportunists, which meant they preferred easy victories. Sarah looked toward Webb. We might not have to fight. He raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? James answered before she could. We bluff. For the next 6 days, every engineer on the station worked without sleep. Functional systems were made to appear far more powerful than they actually were. Damaged weapon batteries were illuminated with external energy feeds. Inactive shield emitters broadcast false power signatures. Dozens of small human defense satellites spread throughout Earth orbit. Individually, they were insignificant. Together, they created the illusion of a sophisticated defensive network. Minjun smiled as he watched thousands of fake sensor echoes appear across the tactical display. If I didn't know better, I'd think we were terrifying. The 3 alien vessels arrived exactly on schedule. They emerged from faster-than-light travel just beyond Mars. Each measured nearly a kilometer long. Angular. Dark. Covered with industrial equipment rather than heavy weapons. Not warships. Working ships. But still vastly larger than anything humanity had built. Every eye inside the command center remained fixed on the display. No one breathed. The alien ships slowed. Stopped. Then began scanning the system. Cutter translated fragments of their communications. Receiving internal transmissions. The room became silent. Translation probability? 74%. A harsh alien voice filled the speakers. Impossible. Another voice replied. The disposal beacon is genuine. A third interrupted. Then why is the vessel active? Minutes passed. The 3 ships continued scanning. Comparing data. Arguing. Finally Cutter translated another sentence. Assessment revised. Target no longer appears abandoned. Unknown defensive capability. James grinned. They're buying it. Sarah didn't smile. Not yet. For nearly an hour, neither side moved. The silence stretched until it became almost unbearable. Then, one by one, the alien vessels rotated away from Earth. Their engines flared. Trajectory changed. Outbound. General Webb stared at the display. They're leaving. No one celebrated. Not until Cutter confirmed. Enemy vessels accelerating away from the system. Probability of immediate engagement. Less than 1%. Only then did the command center erupt. People hugged. Some laughed. Weeks became months. Others cried openly. Humanity had survived its first encounter with another intelligent civilization. Without firing a single shot. The celebration lasted less than a minute. Cutter interrupted again. Its voice remained calm. Warning. Sarah turned. What now? The scavengers have transmitted a departure report through the Galactic Trade Network. James' smile disappeared. What does that mean? It means... Cutter paused. They have informed other civilizations that an obsolete Kalan warship has been restored by an unregistered species. General Webb slowly looked toward the stars beyond the observation window. So now, the entire galaxy knows we're here. Cutter answered with chilling certainty. Correction. The entire galaxy does not know. A long pause followed. But someone important eventually will. And somewhere far beyond human sensors. That report had already reached the desk of someone who wasn't looking for salvage. She was looking for worlds to conquer. The report crossed half the galaxy in less than 3 weeks. Most who received it ignored it. To freight companies it was nothing more than another salvage dispute. To merchants, it was background noise buried beneath thousands of daily transmissions. To the Galactic Concord, it barely deserved a footnote. But not everyone dismissed it. Far inside the borders of the Dravic hegemony, a military empire feared and respected throughout known space, the report landed on the desk of Fleet Commander Kayla Varn. She read it once. Then again. An obsolete Kalan warship. Legally discarded. Unexpectedly restored. An unknown species. Primitive. Unregistered. Capable of frightening away experienced scavengers without firing a shot. Kayla leaned back in silence. Interesting. Her tactical officer looked up. Commander? She enlarged the report. Primitive civilizations panic. She highlighted another section. They surrender. Another. They don't restore 5-century-old warships. The bridge became quiet. Someone down there is smarter than the report suggests. Within hours, Kayla presented her recommendation to the High Military Council. The chamber overlooked the crimson skies of the Dravic capital world. Admirals surrounded a circular tactical table displaying Earth's solar system. One elderly marshal dismissed the report with a wave. A primitive species. Another nodded. Probably luck. Kayla disagreed. Luck doesn't rebuild advanced military technology. She touched the projection. This system remains unregistered. No Concord protection. No recognized sovereignty. No allied fleets. She looked around the room. If another civilization discovers them first, they'll gain access to a restored Kalan warship. Silence followed. Every admiral understood the implication. The oldest marshal finally spoke. So what do you recommend? Kayla answered without hesitation. A reconnaissance force. 5 warships. If they cooperate, we claim the vessel. If they resist. She allowed the sentence to hang. We claim the system. The council approved the mission before the meeting ended. 5 of the hegemony's newest warships departed 2 days later. Earth remained unaware. Life continued at a frantic pace. The victory against the scavengers had bought humanity time. Nothing more. Every day inside Ascension Station brought another improvement. The Thresh cutter no longer resembled abandoned wreckage. Hull fractures had vanished beneath fresh armor. Internal transport systems operated again. Gravity generators functioned across nearly 80% of the ship. Most importantly, the main engines had completed their first sustained propulsion test. James Okafor watched the massive vessel glide gracefully around lunar orbit. 5 years earlier it had been space junk. Now, it answered to human commands. He smiled. We're actually flying an alien battleship. Sarah laughed softly. Don't let Cutter hear you call it a battleship. Almost instantly the AI replied through nearby speakers. Correction. This vessel is officially classified as a heavy assault cruiser. James groaned. See. I told you. Even Cutter seemed to pause. Battleship is acceptable in informal conversation. The room burst into laughter. The AI had changed. Not emotionally, but practically. Years alongside humans had altered its behavior in subtle ways. It still processed information like a machine. Yet somehow, it had become part of the crew. The laughter disappeared 3 days later. Without warning, every display aboard the ship turned red. Priority alert. Long-range gravitational disturbance detected. Sarah looked toward the tactical screen. What happened? Cutter answered immediately. 5 hyperspace transition signatures. James' smile vanished. 5. The tactical display zoomed outward beyond Pluto. 5 enormous energy blooms appeared simultaneously. Unlike the scavenger ships, these signatures radiated immense power. General Marcus Webb entered the command center before anyone finished processing the data. Identification. Cutter required only seconds. Confirmed. Dravic Hegemony Military Fleet. The room became silent. Sarah folded her arms. Assessment. Cutter projected 5 rotating holograms. Each vessel dwarfed the scavenger ships. Angular armor. Heavy shield generators. Massive spinal weapons. Military perfection. Each individual vessel exceeds current Thresh cutter combat capability. James slowly looked at the numbers. And together? Another pause. Direct engagement probability of human victory. The calculation continued. 2.6%. No one spoke. Not even Webb. After years of preparation. After unimaginable sacrifice. The odds remained almost hopeless. An emergency summit connected every major capital on Earth. Presidents. Prime ministers. Kings. Generals. Scientists. The largest gathering of world leaders in human history stared at the same tactical display. 5 alien warships. Approaching relentlessly. One leader finally asked the question everyone feared. Can we win? Sarah refused to lie. In a fair fight. She glanced toward Cutter. No. Silence filled the conference. Another leader whispered. So this is the end. James suddenly stood. No. Every screen turned toward him. We've been thinking about this the wrong way. General Webb raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? James walked toward the tactical display. We keep asking whether we can beat them. He pointed toward the 5 approaching ships. We can't. Another pause. So let's stop trying. Confused looks spread across the conference. James smiled. They expect us to fight their battle. They expect organized formations. They expect predictable tactics. They expect fear. Sarah immediately understood. So, we give them humans. The next 48 hours became the busiest in Earth's history. Every orbital ship worked non-stop. Every engineer slept beside their equipment. Every military unit received new assignments. Cutter opened centuries-old tactical archives describing Dravik combat doctrine. One conclusion appeared repeatedly. The Dravik valued overwhelming force. Perfect formations. Rigid command structures. Disciplined engagements. James looked at the report and smiled. They're brilliant. Sarah nodded. But they're predictable. General Webb leaned over the tactical display. What do you have in mind? James activated a new hologram. Hundreds of tiny blue icons appeared around the solar system. Defense satellites. Attack drones. Interceptor craft. Decoy platforms. Minefields. Sensor disruptors. None powerful individually. Together. A maze. We don't defeat them with strength. He looked around the room. We defeat them by making every advantage they have. Work against them. Far beyond Earth's orbit. Fleet Commander Kayla Varn observed the growing blue planet through her flagship sensors. Primitive cities glittered beneath white clouds. Tiny orbital stations circled the world. One restored Kalan cruiser floated protectively near its moon. She smiled. They've made impressive progress. Her executive officer nodded. For primitives. Kayla agreed. For primitives. She stood from her command chair. Signal the fleet. 5 warships tightened formation. Maintain standard conquest protocol. No one questioned the order. Why would they? Every previous campaign had ended exactly the same way. A display of overwhelming strength. A brief resistance. Complete victory. None of them noticed the thousands of small human objects already moving silently into carefully prepared positions. None of them imagined that an outmatched species had spent years studying exactly how empires like theirs preferred to fight. And none of them realized. They were flying directly into the first battlefield humanity had ever designed specifically to defeat an enemy stronger than itself. For 2 years, humanity had rebuilt what the galaxy had thrown away. The forgotten warship no longer looked like a drifting corpse. Its scarred armor had been repaired. Its engines could breathe again. Its ancient weapons could fire. Its AI had become more than a machine. And every engineer aboard understood one simple truth. It still wasn't enough. Then the warning finally came. Cutter interrupted a routine systems check with a tone nobody had heard before. Long-range sensors detect 5 incoming military vessels. The control room froze. Sarah looked toward the tactical display. 5 enormous contacts appeared beyond the outer planets. Unlike the scavengers, these ships moved with perfect formation, perfect confidence, perfect discipline. James didn't have to ask. He already knew. This isn't salvage. Cutter confirmed. Identification complete. Dravith Hegemony Military Fleet. Silence filled the room. Years of preparation. Years of sacrifice. Years of rebuilding. Everything humanity had accomplished was about to be tested. Sarah immediately called an emergency planetary conference. Within hours, every major world leader appeared on encrypted communications. Nobody argued. Nobody fought over politics. The sensor images spoke for themselves. 5 alien warships. Heading directly toward Earth. Someone finally asked the question everyone feared. Can we beat them? Sarah didn't lie. No. The room became painfully quiet. Not because people had lost hope. Because everyone understood the truth. Raw power favored the enemy. Always. General Webb leaned forward. Then we don't fight their battle. Every eye turned toward him. We fight ours. That sentence became humanity's battle plan. Instead of matching strength with strength, They would weaponize uncertainty. Cutter spent the next 48 hours analyzing every historical record it possessed about Dravith warfare. Patterns emerged. The Dravith respected power. They relied on overwhelming force. They believed weaker civilizations always panicked. They expected surrender. They expected predictable resistance. Humanity planned to give them neither. James led engineering teams around the clock. Thousands of defense satellites were secretly repositioned. False energy generators were hidden throughout orbital space. Attack craft received last-minute upgrades designed for speed instead of armor. Engineers rewired damaged sections of the Thresh cutter beyond every recommended safety limit. Every improvement carried risk. Every shortcut increased the chance the ship would destroy itself. Nobody cared anymore. Firth lost. Safety regulations wouldn't matter. Meanwhile, Commander Thurka studied Earth from aboard her flagship. The reports amused her. A primitive civilization. One obsolete warship. A handful of improvised defense craft. She had expected frightened survivors. Instead she found construction projects. Orbital stations. Mining operations. Military activity. Interesting. But not worrying. Primitive species often mistook enthusiasm for capability. She intended to correct that misunderstanding. Her fleet continued forward without changing formation. Exactly as Dravith doctrine demanded. Exactly as Cutter predicted. Back aboard the Thresh cutter, Sarah watched enemy movements appear across the tactical display. They're following standard doctrine. James smiled. Good. That means they're predictable. General Webb addressed every pilot across Earth's growing defense fleet. This battle is not about proving we're stronger. It's about proving we're smarter. Around him, thousands of men and women climbed into cockpits, checked weapon systems, sealed helmets, looked one final time at pictures of families waiting back on Earth. Nobody expected an easy victory. Many expected never to return. Yet nobody stepped away. Not one. Because behind every pilot stood an entire planet that finally understood something terrifying. The galaxy wasn't coming to welcome humanity. It was coming to claim it. Sarah took one long breath, then looked across the bridge. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, people who, only a few years earlier, had been strangers from rival nations. Now they stood together. One crew, one world, one chance. Cutter's voice echoed calmly through the bridge. Enemy fleet entering engagement range. General Webb slowly stood. The room became perfectly silent. Then he gave the order history would remember forever. Battle stations. The first true war between Earth and the galaxy. The moment the Dravith fleet crossed into Earth's inner defense zone, General Webb gave a single command. Execute. Instantly, thousands of hidden defense satellites activated. Space exploded with false sensor signatures. Phantom fleets appeared across enemy scanners. Fake weapons. Fake power cores. Fake warships. The Dravith formation hesitated. Only for a few seconds. But that was exactly what humanity needed. Commander Thurka frowned as warning symbols flooded her tactical display. Impossible. Her perfectly disciplined formation began making small course corrections to avoid threats that didn't exist. Those tiny adjustments created gaps. James saw them immediately. That's it. Those are our openings. From behind asteroids, behind abandoned mining platforms, and inside fields of orbital debris, hundreds of small human strike craft erupted into space. They didn't charge head-on. They swarmed. Each pilot had one simple mission. Disappear. Attack again. The tiny ships danced around the massive Dravith warships like insects around giants. Before enemy targeting computers could lock on, they were already gone. Commander Thurka slammed her fist against the command console. Reform the fleet. But every attempt to regroup triggered another wave of attacks. Human pilots weren't trying to destroy the enemy. They were exhausting them, distracting them, pulling them exactly where Earth wanted them. Inside the Thresh cutter, Cutter's voice remained calm. Enemy formation integrity reduced to 62%. Communication delay increasing. Sarah looked toward James. Now. James nodded. Now. Power surged through the ancient warship. Every restored reactor screamed under maximum load. Warning alarms echoed through engineering. Several systems entered critical overload. James ignored every warning. Give me everything. If this ship survives today, it can complain tomorrow. Cutter locked onto the Dravith flagship. Primary target acquired. The bridge fell silent. Sarah whispered, Fire. The ancient main cannon awakened for the first time in decades. A brilliant beam of concentrated energy tore across space. The blast slammed directly into the flagship's communication array. The explosion ripped through its command systems. Antennas shattered. Control relays burned. Internal networks collapsed. Commander Thurka watched her tactical displays disappear one after another. No. Her fleet was blind. Without centralized coordination, every warship was suddenly fighting alone. Exactly as humanity had planned. General Webb smiled for the first time since the invasion began. They're isolated. Hit them. Wave after wave of human strike craft attacked weakened shield generators. Orbital defense platforms opened fire from unexpected angles. The Thresh cutter targeted engines, weapons, sensor arrays, never wasting a shot. Human engineers had learned one important lesson from centuries of history. You don't always defeat a stronger enemy by destroying them. Sometimes, you simply remove every advantage they possess. Hours passed. The battle became brutal. Several human squadrons never returned. Defense satellites burned across Earth's sky. The Thresh cutter absorbed tremendous damage. Hull fractures spread through multiple decks. Life support failed in several sections. Engineers fought fires while repairing systems under enemy bombardment. James barely left his console. Every few seconds he rerouted power somewhere else. Weapons, shields, engines, anything necessary to keep the ship alive 1 minute longer. Finally, one Dravith cruiser lost propulsion completely. It drifted helplessly away from the battlefield. A second ship suffered catastrophic shield failure. Forced into retreat. Commander Thurka stared in disbelief. This wasn't supposed to happen. Primitive civilizations surrendered. Primitive civilizations panicked. Primitive civilizations didn't outthink superior fleets. Her tactical officer quietly spoke. Commander, continuing this engagement risks total mission failure. For a long moment, Thurka said nothing. Pride battled reason. Then she made the only decision left. All surviving vessels withdraw. One by one, the remaining Dravith warships turned away from Earth, retreating into deep space. The silence that followed lasted only seconds. Then every human communication channel erupted. Cheers, laughter, relief. Some cried openly. Others simply sat in exhausted silence. Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. James leaned back in his chair. We actually did it. Cutter spoke softly. Battle analysis complete. Probability of human victory before engagement. 3.7%. A small smile crossed Sarah's face. Then it's a good thing. We've never been very good at accepting the odds. Far beyond the solar system, emergency reports began spreading across the galactic concord. Every transmission carried the same impossible message. An unregistered primitive species had defeated a professional galactic invasion fleet. For the first time in generations, the galaxy stopped laughing at humanity and started paying attention. The battle for Earth was over, but its consequences had only just begun. Across the solar system, rescue ships raced toward damaged stations, drifting fighters, and the battered Thresh cutter. Engineers worked without sleep, sealing hull breaches, restoring life support, and searching every compartment for survivors. Victory had come at a heavy price. Thousands of brave pilots, soldiers, and engineers would never return home. Every nation lowered its flags in remembrance. For the first time in history, the entire human race mourned together. Not as separate countries, not as rival powers, but as one civilization. Sarah Chin stood on the observation deck of the scarred warship. Beyond the reinforced glass, Earth slowly rotated beneath her. The same blue world that, only a few years earlier, had been dismissed as an empty corner of space. Now it had survived its first interstellar war. James Okafor quietly joined her. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, James broke the silence. They'll come back. Sarah nodded. I know. The Dravith won't forget this. Neither will anyone else. Behind them, Cutter's calm voice echoed through the ship. Strategic assessment complete. The probability of future contact with advanced galactic civilizations has increased significantly. James smiled. That's your way of saying we've made ourselves famous. Correction, Cutter replied. Infamous. Sarah laughed for the first time in days. It felt strange, but it also felt deserved. Far beyond Earth's skies, the story spread. From merchant convoys, to military fleets, to information brokers, to the halls of the Galactic Concord itself. The report was simple. A forgotten Kalan warship scheduled for disposal had not remained abandoned. A primitive species had restored it, improved it, used it, and defeated a professional military expedition that should have overwhelmed them with ease. The details confused everyone. How had an unregistered civilization accomplished something experienced fleets considered impossible? How had a species that had never traveled beyond its own star managed to outthink commanders who had fought wars across hundreds of systems? No one could fully explain it. But one conclusion appeared in every intelligence briefing. Never underestimate humans. Some Concord representatives argued that Earth should immediately receive protected status before another conflict erupted. Others warned that humanity's unpredictable nature made them dangerous. Several military governments quietly ordered updated tactical simulations. A few powerful empires began watching the Sol system with growing interest. Not because Earth possessed the strongest fleet, but because Earth possessed something far more difficult to measure: adaptability. Months later, the Thresh cutter entered dry dock one final time. Its restoration was nearly complete. Fresh armor covered the old scars. New human-built systems blended seamlessly with ancient alien technology. The obsolete relic had become something entirely new. During a quiet ceremony witnessed by every nation on Earth, the ship received a new name: Second Chance. Not just for the vessel, for humanity. As the name illuminated across the ship's massive hull, thousands of workers, astronauts, engineers, and soldiers stood together in silent pride. Nobody applauded immediately. Everyone simply looked, remembering how it had all begun. Not with a glorious first contact, not with a welcoming galactic alliance, but because someone somewhere had looked at Earth and decided it was nothing more than a convenient place to dump their trash. That single mistake had changed history, because humanity had never been defined by what it was given, only by what it built from it. Sarah looked toward the endless sea of stars. They still think we're the weakest civilization out there. James smiled. For now. Cutter answered one final time. Recommendation. Continue building. Continue learning. Continue preparing. Sarah's smile widened. We already are. Far beyond the edge of the solar system, new eyes were turning toward the small blue planet. Some came with curiosity. Some with fear. Some with ambition. None of them yet understood the truth. Humanity had been ignored. Humanity had been underestimated. Humanity had been treated like it didn't matter. And history had proven time and time again, nothing is more dangerous than a civilization with everything left to prove.